Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Pedro Oliveira. I am the chair of the enhancement team for the Latino advocacy coaches group, United Soccer Coaches. We are today presenting Coach Marcelo um, and we're just waiting for him to jump into our conversation, and he will lead us on the topic of today: how futsal can improve soccer in the U.S. Coach Marcelo Antonelli, good afternoon to you. We're very excited to have you here today with us to present your content to the Latino Coaches Group, United Soccer Coaches Association, and the Enhancement Group team is pleased to have you here on our YouTube channel with us today. So without further ado, I want to give you the time to present to us the topic for today, which is how futsal can improve soccer in the United States. Thank you, Coach Marcelo, for being here with us this afternoon.
Good morning, Pedro. It's a great pleasure to be here. I really like to start thanking, the United Soccer Coaches Latino Advocacy Group for this opportunity. And Julio Serrano is doing an excellent job, leading as the chair of this group, and the same way that all the group leaders, you for the enhancement team, Lawyer Urbina with development, John Orozco with recruitment, and Gabriel Renteria with the recognition group. And then inside of our group, so many people working and make things happen. I'm really pleased to be part of it this year. So I'm really excited to be here. And then today I'd like to talk about a methodology to develop soccer based upon futsal concepts. So this is the first important part. This presentation has to do a lot of futsal, but it's not about futsal, it's about soccer. The same way you can have, so many different soccer methodologies coming from Europe. You have the German style, you have the catenaccio from Italy, you have the tiki-taka from Spain. You have all the different styles that the Dutch had in the past, right? The total soccer in the past, and now a style of opening the field big. So we have many different styles around the world. So basically this is a way to develop soccer players, soccer teams using futsal and the concepts of futsal to develop soccer players. So there are many different ways to do this. Unfortunately, I think futsal is not being perceived in the right way in this country. So I'd like to explain a little bit, to talk a little bit more about that. In order to do that, I'd like to share my screen and show a PowerPoint presentation. Let me see here, Pedro, if I'm allowed to share my screen, or you might need, oh, perfect. You allow me already. That's awesome. So great, you're seeing my screen, correct?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Perfect. All right. So a couple years ago, I wrote a book. It's called Soccer Powered by Futsal, trying to put all these ideas together. And then, things were growing and it became a little bigger every time. So basically, what is Soccer Powered by Futsal? So as I said, it started as a book, but now it's a methodology to develop soccer coaches and team based upon a broad view of futsal and high-level strategies. Okay, so again, I want to make that part very clear from the start, because I know when you talk about futsal, many of my former colleagues from college, I mean former because I left college coaching 2 years ago when my daughter was born. But if I talk about futsal for college coaches, well, futsal is nice, but it's for kids. Now, there's many things you can do even high level. I'm going to be talking about that in a little bit. Anyway, many methodologies, they focus on individual development, and they focus well like on formations. But a very important part of the game, no matter what style of soccer you like, no matter what formation you like to play, your players will have to face small group scenarios, small group challenges, whether it's in offense or defense or in transition. And futsal strategies and futsal concepts will help your players to be very effective in those scenarios. So that's the idea of the methodology. So the goals for soccer private futsal are to bridge the gap between the two sports, to support futsal players and coaches, and offer new tools for soccer players and coaches. Okay, so we're gonna explain that, of course, in more details in the next ones. So when you talk about the relationship between futsal and soccer, it's incredible how people see that in very different ways. You know, you can find the two sports really different if you just think about the space, right? A soccer court, futsal court is small, a soccer field is big, the number of players, the surface. So you can find those two sports really completely separated, different, and say there's no many transfer between the two. However, if you want to find those two sports really similar, all you need to do is look at the principles of play, the concepts, and you find those principles of play and the concepts are basically the same. So width, depth, mobility, zone or individual defending, body position to receive a ball. Like I could go on and on here for hours and say, okay, are you talking about futsal or soccer? Because the principles of play and concepts are basically the same. In terms of combinations, and of course, as you can see here in the slide, it's all under the tactical umbrella. In terms of combinations, in theory, they are the same as well. But futsal in general is way more developed than soccer, offer way more options. And I will explain a little later why. However, when you say futsal is more developed, that's the idea, right? That's the culture that you learn different things in futsal that you don't normally learn in soccer, but you can learn in soccer. There's nothing to tell you that you cannot learn in soccer. Just example of strategies as well, like how nowadays you use the goalkeeper to play out to the back to create a numerical superiority in the same way that futsal has been doing for already 10, 15 years. Now, formations and shapes, well, shapes can be the same, triangles, diamonds, so you can find in both sports. Formations are obviously different because soccer has 11 players, futsal has 5. So of course, you know, I could relate in soccer 1-4-3-3 to a 1-2-1-1-2-1 in futsal, but that's not really the best way to compare the sports. The principles that are what control all the tactical aspects of the game, that's the big similarity. Now, normally when people talk about the relationship, people talk about what? Technical aspects, right? When you talk to people about futsal, say, yeah, it's about, you know, stopping the ball with the bottom of your foot and kicking with your toes. Well, that's not wrong. We can talk about those techniques. We can talk about when they're useful or not on the soccer field, but that's by far not the biggest thing that futsal can bring to soccer by itself, but it's the development of the player. So this past years, for a long time, I've been talking to people all over the world in terms of what they have in terms of similar works relating futsal and soccer. Like in Italy, you might have seen, Pedro, I don't know if you saw that recently, I posted, some more people posted, like Juventus just started to, Juventus, La Vecchia Signora from Italy, you know, that just won the 9th consecutive title in Italy. They just decided that they're gonna join their youth teams with futsal and soccer. Like they're gonna be practicing together. So they actually just hired the former coach for the Italian national futsal team to be a member of their coaching staff for the base. So that's a big thing. It's a project in Italy that's called Futsal in Soccer, and it's growing a lot there. I'm actually in touch with those guys. One of those guys is currently coaching my last team where I played in Italy. We play futsal in Italy. In Spain, the means work about that. Go ahead, Pedro.
That's a brilliant move by Juventus, going in towards that direction. I believe it's a brilliant move.
Yeah, and again, some other big clubs there start to follow the same steps and understanding that there's a lot from futsal that you need to incorporate in soccer if you want to achieve a higher level. Or I mean, it's not the only way, of course. There's different ways to achieve goals, achieve development, but it's definitely a great way to do that. United States, there's very little still. I've been working on that with Soccer Powered by Futsal, with the book, with a course that we're developing right now. I'll talk more about that later. Anyway, I'm talking to people all over the world about this. We can incorporate many more people here. In Brazil, they are thinking about uniting the license for soccer and futsal for the base, because they also understand how important it is to be done. How about futsal in the United States? So of course, that's probably the biggest interest of the people listening to this. Of course, if they're listening from America, right? Of course, United Soccer Coach has people from all over the world following. So there's two different ways that futsal is practiced at the base, at the youth here in America, right? One is futsal specific clubs, and other ones like soccer clubs that use futsal. We don't have much of competitive high-level futsal. There's not really a professional league. There are some they call semi-pro leagues, but of course you're far, far away from the reality of competitive futsal in Italy, in Spain, Brazil, in Portugal, in Russia, in so many countries around the world. Anyway, so when you talk about futsal, there's so many misconceptions that I see based upon what I hear from people. So everybody talk about the more touches on the ball, the quick thinking, the technical skills. So those things are not bad, right? They're all three good things. So why I'm complaining? I'm not complaining against believing those three things. I'm complaining about the very restricted view of the benefits. So if you just think about that, if you don't think of futsal as a game where you have to defend very well, where you have to have a very accurate movement off the ball, where you don't add so many other aspects of the game, you end up for creating ineffective methodologies. So I see that a lot in soccer clubs, where the kids go there and the only thing they do is like one ball per kid. Okay, so you have more touches, right? And then it keeps passing your foot over the ball for your scissors, your step over, whatever. After a while, players, coaches, parents lose interest, and then you lose investment, you have less benefits. So the environment that creates those world-class stars, and I could be naming, like so many different players that start on futsal, it is not what we have been doing in most of the soccer clubs around the country. And again, I'm not gonna go much in the list, but we could be talking about Zidane saying that he started in futsal, Zinedine Zidane, right? Xavi, Iniesta, Neymar, Ronaldo, Ronaldinho, we could keep going on forever and ever. So many players really start in futsal. But is the futsal that those players start, is that what we're doing here in the United States? So we end up creating this wall of misconceptions, how I like to call it. So is a sport just for kids? Or it's just about crazy skills, right? You see many people, hey, futsal, look at futsal. And then they show Falcão or Ricardinho doing crazy stuff with the ball. And then maybe Ronaldinho, right, since he played soccer and started on futsal, doing those really crazy skills with the ball. That's not bad. That's great. As a Brazilian, I love to watch those things. But what happens if you just think of futsal like this, and you're a competitive coach in college, you're a youth competitive team, wow, my players are not going to be able to do that, so that's useless for me. So that's the problem about just thinking about this. Another big thing, and that's probably one of the biggest areas of soccer powered by futsal, is the idea that strategies and concepts do not transfer from one sport to another. That's completely not accurate. I can talk a little bit more about that and show this later. And of course, the formations, as I said, are not the same, but the concepts are the same. And strategies, there is so much from futsal that can improve the game of soccer. Another thing is about bringing bad habits. You know, I've heard from people, well, if you use the bottom of your foot to stop the ball, or if you kick with your toes, it's bad technique, it brings you bad habits. Well, I could hear for an hour, I'm not going to go into this very deeply, but technique, you know, it's a method to get something done. We could go into definitions of it, but it's about knowing how to use it. So the same way someone can tell me like kicking with your toes is not good because it has less precision, I can argue so many important goals in the history of soccer were scored when players use that technique. So it's about, you know, knowing how to use it. It's about teaching the right way. So it's just like more resources that your players gain from learning those different techniques. And it cannot help at high level. So there's another misconception, has to do with everything else that's in here. Pedro, if you feel if any questions about it, anything that you'd like for me to explain a little further, please feel free to just cut me and ask any question that you have.
No worries, Marcelo. We are moving along well, and I will interfere for more in depth if needed.
Sounds good. So I published an article in the blog of Soccer Power Futsal like 6-7 months ago about this. 7 uses of futsal, right? So we're talking about futsal developed soccer players. So of course you can just read it, but basically it can be great to initiate, you know, for little kids to start. The environment on the futsal court helps a lot, right? It's easier to pass the ball, to control the ball, to develop your skills in a court than sometimes in some bad soccer fields that you see around there. The fact that they have boundaries around, there's many reasons that facilitates. Now, if you have a competitive futsal that develops the passion for the sport, develops the willingness to train hard, to try to win games in a sport that you have your idols that you see on TV. So that obviously happened to me growing up, happens to millions and millions of Brazilians and Spanish and, you know, from people from other countries that have that as a sport. So this is the area that people here are used to. Teaching concepts for the 4 moments of the game. So that's something that basically doesn't exist, doesn't happen. And I don't know why, and I've been doing this, and I'm gonna show you later a little bit how to get it done. That's a great use of futsal. You can explain your concept very clear on the court. You can get a lot of repetition in a competitive environment, and you can right away transfer that to the soccer field. And then the futsal specific tasks, I'm gonna talk more about that as well later. I guess this is pretty self-explanatory. Futsal has so many ideas from set pieces that you can transfer and use in the soccer field. That's actually something even at the college level, I know some coaches do it. You know, they know someone or they like to watch futsal and they get some ideas and they apply on the soccer field. And then finally, the ideal environment for development. And that's for me the biggest thing by far. It's kind of a result of everything else together. And I'm going to explain that in a separate slide.
Coach Marcelo, I do have a question on that. It's always intrigued me. It's you know, on that third tab, the green tab from the top, more touches, quick thinking, and creativity. You know, the IQ of the players in soccer is very important, as we understand. And is that in so many ways that futsal helps with that developing?
Well, that's a great question because that's a big part of my criticism about the way the futsal has been used here. Because if you just separate this, okay, more touches on the ball. Look, I can touch the ball against the wall 1,000,000 times and I'm not developing anything, right? I'm just developing my inside touch if I keep touching against the wall the same time. I'm not saying that you cannot be creative with a wall, right? There's a lot you can create if you know how to use a wall. But my point is, if you cannot just think about the number of touches. For you to get to this quick thinking, to creativity, and to do in a meaningful way that's going to really help in soccer, you need to achieve this ideal environment of development. And how do you get to this? So, Pedro, I'm going to finish answering your question when you go to this slide. It's going to be like probably 1 or 2 slides from now. Okay? So I'm going to finish answering the question for you. So it's perfect because it's exactly where we're going to. And yeah, I'm gonna go there in a second. Actually, since you asked the question, let's talk about this now, and then we're gonna go back here a little bit. So for futsal to really give those benefits that you just asked about, Pedro, you cannot just go to a court and have touch on the ball and think that you're getting done with all those things. Sure, you can have more 1v1s, and that's great. You can have more goals. But cognitively, it's very restrict if you don't create this an environment that players are challenged the entire time, becomes competitive, is game real, but you're doing all those things. You're passing and moving, you change directions of your runs, you're recycling runs, you're offering support. So you have many things here on the offense side, on the defense side, and on both transitions. So how do we get to this, right? And that has to do with futsal strategies. And that's why I have to go back a little bit to show like what we need to add to this that we have currently and to achieve this. And this is the environment where Ronaldinho grew up with, Zidane, Xavi, Iniesta, Neymar, like all those guys created this environment. They did not grow up going to court and just have a one-on-one of the ball and doing moves. So just to be clear, when we talk about using futsal to develop, we believe that based upon science, based upon experience, based upon our own experience, that during these years here, a futsal-based years on a court are the best. Why? Because the environment on the court has so many benefits in terms of speed of the play, repetition. You have like the boundaries. There's lots of things in this that if you mix it with a good pedagogy, a good methodology, we're going to talk about that in a little bit, becomes the ideal environment for that age. Followed by an age where you could be playing both sports at the same time. And then when you go high school or college, professional, you can use some futsal strategies for short-term transfer or even direct transfer. And as well, I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But basically, primary more on the futsal court, transition period, and going more on the soccer field. Now, for example, in this transition period, you could be playing, a couple of days on the futsal court, training there. The other days, whatever your age is, whatever it's in the soccer field, could be 7v7, 9v9, whatever is the age. So the mix between those two environments could be helping produce great players. When I was coaching Brazil, a girls team, a Guarani, basically every player that we had in there ended up playing a good level here in America. Some going to Brazilian national teams, Division I, being all Americans, and they all grew up kind of doing this kind of path of development. Why? Because that created environment of training that I was talking about. So I start to talk a little bit about those futsal strategies. And I'm telling you that they apply to soccer, and they can show in video in a little bit. So basically you have to consider that they have the same principles of play. So that's the important part for everything else. Now, based upon this, you have to understand on the futsal court, it's easier to control things, right? You have a smoother surface, a ball that bounces least, you have less players. So the model of play, so if you talk about tactical periodization, the principles and sub-principles of play can be more developed. So that will result in combinations that demand more from the players, defensive systems that are really organized, transitions that will be super effective. So for example, if you have a 3v2, you need in one pass or two in getting behind. So it's the same for everything else. So those futsal strategies are really well developed. And again, I'm going to show in video. It's going to be easier to show this, but they all apply on the soccer field, and they're very effective in the soccer field. And again, example of this is how now, Liverpool, Man City, Barcelona, they all been using like the goalkeeper as an extra player. So that's a futsal strategy since 1997 when they changed the rule. So at the time, I was a soccer and futsal goalkeeper in Brazil. And I remember when they changed the rule, I was in college. So we started to talk, hey, how can you incorporate the goalkeeper into play to have an extra player? So it took 20 years for soccer to really now start to use it. Actually, I talked a little bit about this already. So why those strategies the best strategy for small number scenarios? Because it's results of years of in a sport where, as I said, there's less numbers, it's a more controlled environment, and the physical constraints, the space, require better strategies. So the better your defense, the better your offense has to be, and vice versa. So the result are those strategies for small numbers. And you hear very little about strategy for small number scenarios. We hear a lot about individual training. We hear a lot about formations. You know, how do you play a 4-4-2 against a 4-3-3 or a 3-4-3? There's books about like every system, but at the end of the day, no matter what formation you use, you're gonna have to face those small number scenarios. And we talk very little about the strategies for the small numbers. Now, if you mix those strategies with effective methodology, that how those items here, I'm not gonna read them all, then you can create this higher level training environment that we just talked about. Did that answer the question now, Pedro?
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question. So when you talk about the methodology, soccer powered by futsal, those would be like the main aspects of it, right? A different, more developed way to read the game, integrate technical and tactical development, master many different concepts using the futsal courts, and then you're going to transfer that to small sided games. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, and implement all that on the soccer field. So all those things help create this higher level of training environment. Just to give an example. So you have your training, let's say it's a U13 team. So if they have been playing for futsal for years with the right methodology, all your players know that they have to defend the entire time. All the players know, like when they don't have the ball, to be moving off the ball, to be checking out, checking back, to be recycling their runs, to be changing directional positions. So there's so many different things your players will be doing if they grew up in that environment, that very, very likely in soccer, you're not going to have those players doing at that age. Why? Because you have a bigger space. So maybe you can just kick the ball behind, getting behind. So you're developing different things. And of course, all those things are important to be developed. But the problem is, in soccer, if you just need to develop certain things when you go to really high level and you're playing against a very good defense that doesn't give you space, at that age, you're not going to be able to develop certain things. So this helps the players to use the best windows of development to develop those capacities. And again, in a fun, competitive way.
Marcelo, let me ask you something. That's, let's say, a whole soccer player translating the methodology of futsal into the big game on the 11 v11 environment scenario that we are discussing right now. But how it would translate from a player that's coming from the futsal courts into the soccer fields, is that player adapting an easier way with that methodology?
So that has, the adaptation part has to do with this, the path of development, okay? So the ideal way is to start from early ages on the futsal court using the environment that's gonna offer way more repetition than the soccer field, and where you have to do the quick thinking you asked about, as long as you have like a structure, some strategies. So it's not like a player has the ball and everybody else is watching. So everybody has to be engaged in the game, everybody has to be participating to fully developed. Otherwise, you have what I see so often in clubs that when you go to the futsal court, they have this idea futsal is just about quick skills, doing things with the ball. So when they don't have the ball, they don't do anything. When they don't do anything defending or just one player defending, you're not working on all the cognitive aspects of the game. So it's all tied together. So your defense is tied to your offense and start your transitions. Now, if you ask me, but can you adapt those skills? Well, the logic is the same. I actually can make a little pause now and show in practice. But the history of soccer says that, you know, again, all those names I told you, they basically never stepped on a soccer field until they were 13, and they became the best players in the world. So I guess by itself, you know, we can use the science, we can do research, use different terminology to explain how you adapt. But history is saying that it's not a big problem for you to adapt. And that's for every position, that's for goalkeepers. I myself coach 2 goalkeepers in Brazil. One's in the national team now, one is at Santos FC. They just played futsal until they were like 18. They came to America, one played for Central Florida. The other one was an All-American in a lower division because academically she could not get higher. And they had all this career, it also success, without basically stepping or training at least on a soccer field. Now, that's not the ideal. What they did was not the ideal. The ideal would be here. At this point here, they should be doing both. Okay, but even without doing both, they still able to adapt. And I could be telling you stories of players and players and players in Brazil and that they have the same thing. Now, let's do this. Let's pause a little bit this part then. So let's show a couple examples then. So this is the website, Soccer Powered by Futsal. So in here, you can know a little bit about us, what we do. You can find the book. You can find videos. And then the blog. I really invite everybody to go to this blog. Sorry, I did not get the blog yet. And then you have in English, in Portuguese, in Italian, and some people from the advocacy groups helping me to have in Spanish as well. So it's really a different way to read some aspects of the game. So you can pick your language. Let's say so English to start. And then there's many different things that you can get from this to make you understand better the methodology, how this transition happens. So it would help answer a little bit your question as well.
Yeah.
So for example, let's get to this. Let's see if it's quickly uploading. So the diagonal, right? It's a very common combination in futsal. There's not just any diagonal pass, okay? But it's a way for you to break any defense. You can have like here, like 6 players in line, but then playing a ball with pace, the front foot of this player, you get in behind. And you see that all the time with the Spanish national team, the Brazilian national team. So it's a different way to break a line, not just relying on space behind, because sometimes those space doesn't exist if I have a goalkeeper here, but even in front of the defender. So I'm not going to be explaining this now. But then if you go, for example, to our YouTube channel, and you have links here. So on YouTube, Soccer Powered by Futsal, it's free. The best way is to use the playlists. So since I was talking about the parallel and the diagonal, let's go to let me take the sound off this. So you see something that players practice on the futsal court. That's something that's a normal pass in futsal, and then you can see the translation to the soccer field. Let me go back a little more examples. So basically the players are facing forward, so working body position, receiving the ball. And so those are the penetrating passes that when you see on the soccer field, you're like, wow, how did they do this combination? So you can ask me, okay, but what it has to do with futsal? So I'm not gonna show the entire video here. If you want the entire thing, you're gonna watch the video. But basically, when you go to futsal, players are having the scenarios all the time where they don't have spacing behind. So you can put that inside the futsal rotation. So they're making the rotation, they're moving. I'm not explaining the rotation here, but just to give an idea of how this diagonal happens. So this player was going forward for the 1-2. There's a parallel option that doesn't happen. So he changed direction. So this player finds his front foot and getting there. So the environment in futsal is going to happen very often. It's actually, I was playing this game, was when we won the Italian Cup in Italy many years ago. So we found that diagonal ball in the air. So our player, what he did, it's very subtle. He did the little 2 steps in here to go forward for a parallel. Did not happen. He changed direction, and that's how he found the space. I think I have a very similar example on the soccer field. I don't know if it's in this video or not. I don't know where it is, but I have a very similar example on the soccer field when the player does exactly the same thing and changes directions to arrive. So that's an example. And that's not actually not the easiest one to explain, Pedro. I think it's even easier to explain things like more obvious, to watch. Like, for example, target play. So I'm here in the playlist. So let's go like target play. Checking the time, make sure I don't go too long. For example, the little back. So I remember like watching Liverpool playing, and then Firmino makes this combination with the little touchback, and the team scores. And the guy was narrating the game, I don't know his name, I guess from England by the accent, say, wow, where did this come from? What a combination, what an idea. You see Firmino here for the Liverpool. And I'm watching it and I'm thinking, well, that was a great combination. That was a great pass. But if you look at the futsal game, that happens all the time. Look at Firmino now for Salah. That was the one I remember, like I was watching on TV. Like, wow, what an idea. Well, that happens all the time in futsal. In a high-level game, you're going to see 4 or 5 times that happens. Okay? Yeah, but that's a very specific thing, Marcelo. Well, again, I have dozens of different combinations. It could be the same idea, but it's supposed to go backwards, going forward, like this. You can see Agüero for Juventus, as opposed to for the target to play the ball back, the penetrating run, and you're getting behind. And actually, I can show that with my soccer team. So since we're doing the positive passing, let's see if I can quickly find it. So I have those examples. Integrated training. So that's what I'm doing with my club now, Union FC, where I work. I want to show that example for you. I think I have this in here at the end, where you have the target to play at the end. Like, this video is about defense, but at the end, after we steal the ball with our defense, we do exactly the same. We score the goal with our target, not passing the ball back, but passing it forward. Sorry, I don't remember the top of my mind where that part is. But let's say about defense, right? Because we don't talk much about defense. So I can use the environment in the futsal court or in small-sided games to teach something like zonal defending or double teaming. So on the futsal court, it's very easy to explain things because you have 4v4, so everybody has a role, everybody's engaged. Okay, so I use this with my team, and then we apply exactly the same concepts on the soccer field. So that answers your question about how to transfer as well. Now, here I'm talking about the transfer of group actions, tactical actions. So of course, the technical level is not the same if you start at this level, but that's appropriate for the age from a high school players to be working on those kinds of concepts. Like, most of my players were not used to the idea of like double teaming. And then after we did the initial basic zonal defending and we started the double teaming here, we transferred that to a small zonal defending game where the players were being encouraged as well to start the zonal defending and then double teaming every time that they could. And of course, I'm just skipping through. People can come here later to watch it. And then we transferred that to an 8v8 game. And then, like, within a week, we were at Silver Lakes playing a major showcase And you can see here my forward coming back, where the outside back is having the ball, and she comes from behind with the double teaming, just exactly like we were doing on the futsal court. Sorry, the image is not super quality because it was all the way the other side of the field, but I think you can get the grasp of the concept. Let's show one in the midfield that's very easy to see. So we have one on the other side. Like this one's pretty easy to see as well. Look in the midfield, so the image is better here. So exactly the same thing we had on the futsal court: the pressure, the double teaming, and the player coming from behind and stealing that ball. So I think that's a good example, right, Pedro, to show like the transfer.
Absolutely.
So this kind of thing I have not seen anywhere, like this, using the futsal court like to teach an example of a concept, then you practice that concept there, and then you transfer to the soccer field in a short time. Go ahead, Pedro, you're gonna say something.
No. On that concept of defending, the opposite of that, the quick transition from defending to attack. Do you have for us one or two examples that we can see the similarities of that?
So I don't have any specific drill or progression video about this.
Okay.
But like I can tell you is that we're going back to the diagonal ball. It's perfect for this. So the diagonal ball in a counterattack, every time you have like numbers up in a transition, the diagonal ball. So let's see if I can get any scenario here for counterattack. Oh, I can stop on this thing here. So even like in a 2v2, if you want to get to the goal quickly, okay? So many times players play balls like here in front and you lose this ball. So you could try the through ball, the ball behind the defender, okay? But if you have no space, if the goalkeeper is here, then this ball is not available. Then using the diagonal ball is gonna make your transition super quick. Other way to make it super quick is when the player is here, there's no space, and as opposed to running forward, like let's say forward plays to this player and want to receive back the 1-2. As opposed to receive there, the players break down in here. So all those combinations from futsal are very effective when you go into transition in soccer. And another thing is this: in futsal, your transition means in a few seconds you either gonna score, you might either score or get scored on. So there's this culture factor that players get used to very quickly having to respond to the scenario. Like sometimes in soccer, you lose the ball and
you have a slow transition.
Yes, you can afford to not like in a second or two to do something. In futsal, if you don't do that, having just 4 players on the field, let's say that 2 are over higher than the ball line, like you need to get back. You need to in a couple seconds go back to your position and help your team on defense. And on the other hand, on offense, you just have like a second or 2 to exploit this numerical advantage, because after that the players will come back. Now everything I'm saying here has to do though with the futsal strategies, because if you're just on the court, so if you spend your training just have like 1v1s, like every player on the ball doing moves with the ball, and you never create the environment of training, so all those things I'm telling you are not going to happen, because they're not going to be close to the environment where those superstars grew up. There's an environment that has all those strategies applied on themselves. And that's why my criticism goes in the fact that it's not just about going to court. You have to create an environment. So that's why I'm pausing there. I'm asking the player, hey, don't come towards me now. I have the ball. I'm the goalkeeper here. Okay, so you're playing 3v3 plus a goalkeeper. So make it big. So make it big is going to create a completely different set of choices that players will have to do, both offensively or defensively. So if you're just playing there without any structure, you're going to have some benefits, but it's going to be really more restrict than if you're able to really organize everything that you're doing. Cool.
Excellent.
So it was good. I just showed the the couple of videos, because how can futsal improve small-sided games? Why sometimes I hear, sometimes no, often I hear from soccer coaches, yeah, you know, futsal is good, but why should I use futsal if I can use small-sided games? Small-sided games are more similar. It responds to the principle of specificity, right? It's more specific to play on a grass. Why should I go to a different environment and then my player has to adapt? So to answer this question, and of course that's a very short answer I'm going to give here. I'm actually writing a book just about this right now. But first of all, it's not futsal or small-sided games. As I showed before in the path of development, the environment in futsal has the advantage of speed, of quickness, of repetition. And then as you keep growing, what's going to happen is futsal can improve small-sided games by the knowledge of the coach of all those strategies that I was talking to you about, of ideas, of being used to the small scenario. The layout of the exercise, creating problems for the players to solve. And sorry, I talked already about the strategy. So the coach development, the layout, and the strategy. So you put all those things together, and you're gonna have better small-sided games. You're gonna have many ideas, many different ways. You're gonna read the game in a different way as a coach, create different layouts that will make players use those strategies. Sorry, now I explained it better. So you can put all those things together in creating better small-sided games. How about goalkeepers? So I've heard as well, yeah, it's okay for a goalkeeper, but the size of the goal, you know, like it doesn't happen. Well, it's not like that. And again, I have personal experience in my own life and so many players I coached in futsal that became very successful in soccer. The first thing you have to think about culture. The goalkeeper from the start is fully inserted in the team's model of play. The goalkeeper is part of it. The goalkeeper is not that strange creature back in the goal that is not participating. He or she is there participating the entire time in heavy repetition, using the feet, hand, body, everything. So the repetition, obviously, that you have on the futsal court, and technique. So for example, for saving techniques, there's many different ways to save in futsal that were considered like futsal specific to a couple years ago. But now they're being used, like especially it's interesting, England goalkeeper coaches are using a lot. They're, hey, look at those futsal goalkeepers doing this. And they're having their players actually use. So some examples of futsal strategies to save. This was not very normal to, let's say, 7, 8 years ago. And nowadays, so this of course is more as a collapse dive, the short save. So this probably is something that has been traditionally in soccer for a while. These and other variations of 1v1 scenarios were not very used in soccer, maybe are not yet in many parts of the world. That's why we have to go to Neuer, we have to go to De Gea, those examples of high level goalkeepers using strategies, using techniques for saving that are very similar to futsal. And again, there's another book just about it. I'm just going quickly through this. Distribution. I guess Ederson is someone right now that is on the spot, right? So both, who would say English soccer, tough, you know, straight soccer, cross and finish, that you'd have the top 2 teams with Brazilian goalkeepers that grew up with futsal, using their feet to help building the play.
That's actually a beautiful example right there. You know,
yeah.
when the style of the game that you're playing adapts perfectly to the game that you go to the environment that you're going to be in. So it's a great example.
Exactly. And you know, 10 years ago, like you'd say that I'm crazy to say that, but now it became the norm. And again, it's been something in futsal now for at least 20 years. Now, Ederson has like interviews talking about the Brazilian Confederation saying, hey, futsal was just the same for me. We had strategies for me to come and shoot, to score, to be the extra man. So he grew up with that. And again, can you adapt those to small-sided games? Yes, you can. So again, the idea would be for him as a young goalkeeper to be having repetition on the futsal court, and then start to transition playing both. And in soccer, futsal strategies have a lot to help soccer strategies to develop in terms of how to use the goalkeeper, how to play out of the back with a superiority. Honestly, like watching Barcelona now, how they are using the goalkeeper is exactly the same as in futsal, it's the same principles. And then in Brazil, they're using a lot as well.
You know, you just say something that for me it's mind blowing because in futsal, obviously repetition it's gonna make you better and grow your game altogether. But for some reason, in our let's say in our soccer, let's call that, repetition has sometimes it's not so welcomed as a tool of increment the quality of our players and of the game. There is that misconcept. I truly believe on that.
That's a great point, Pedro. And when I mean repetition, I don't mean exactly the same thing.
Exactly.
I mean lots of scenarios where you have to make decisions. And that's the difference. That's the point where the repetition concept gets
it's the
tricked a little bit.
variation. It's the variation of the repetitions that's important.
Yeah, so when you say he had so many repetitions there, every repetition is a little different. It can be a 1v1, a 2v1, a situation where he has to come out of the goal and cover, and another situation where he has to delay and stay in the goal. So I'm not talking about repetition in an analytical way when you just keep doing the same thing without creativity. Because in a way I was criticizing that, saying, hey, I think kids stay too much on the use of futsal in America. You go there and keep repeating the same movements over and over, you and the ball. And again, I'm not saying that's wrong, but I think when you overdo that in detriment of gaming real scenarios in a good model of the play. That's what the environment of training that I'm preaching about. So there's different ways to have a repetition, just exactly the same, or repetitions where you have your decision making and coming in a game real environment. And I think there's room for both. I just think we have been doing too much of the first when there's absolutely no decision making there.
Sure.
So what Neuer did in 2014 covering is as well something happens in futsal all the time, where the goalkeeper has to come out of his area or her area and cover the team. And then the leading part of it, and again, I think the fact that the goalkeeper is inserted in the model of play from the starting futsal helps the goalkeeper to create a different relationship with the players and really, develop a better leading of the team. So that was basically the idea of my view, and it's not just mine. As I said, there's lots of people around the world thinking the same way. Juventus, in a way, is thinking the same way. Of course, everyone has their own reading about this, right? About what futsal can bring to the table. But just the idea that's very different from the concepts that people have now of futsal that's just for little kids or just, crazy things with the ball, that the strategies don't apply. Like, I think we are so far away from what futsal can bring to the table. And not just the game of futsal, but its concepts. So in this transition for small-sided games, for functional games, or even direct transition, I do not even touch that today. Otherwise, we're going to run out of time. So right now, what we offer is Soccer Power Futsal. If you go to the website, soccerpowerfutsal.com, you have the link for a Facebook page, Instagram, YouTube. So you have many videos, you have articles, we have the book there. And then we're producing right now online courses, to help exactly like what I try to do here in around 45 minutes, more or less. Of course, going way more in depth and actually explaining how to do it, what those techniques are, how we get there, and trying to do that in a way that can fit coaches, because I really would like to see, all this content from futsal reaching to the soccer fields. It's a big task, it's a big challenge, because I guess the misconceptions about futsal are very strong here. So there's a lot of work for us to be able to reach the coach, to clubs, and the players, to make everybody understand everything that they can get from futsal. So again, there's a lot of content. I have a team of very good coaches here in California with me producing this, help develop all this methodology, because they want to implement in their clubs as well. So they said, hey, let's get together, let's develop this, let's get this done. So we have been working now for months. Those will be the goals, understand how, why to use futsal, how to bridge that gap, provide different ways to improve their players and teams, especially like those tasks for small group scenarios. Anyway, there's so many different ways that so many different things you can accomplish with this course. Those will be the models, like I touched on some of them today. So this is kind of the base, explain those strategies, the futsal. That the biggest thing for me, the creating the ideal environment of training. So how to really use your time as a soccer club in the futsal court to create an environment that will actually develop your players in a similar way that some of the best players in the world were developed. And I think we're far from this. This is kind of my experience as a college coach, Division I, using futsal strategies for 10 years in the schools. Like I work at St. Francis University and at UC Davis, applying futsal strategies to our college team. So direct transfer. Again, I have not talked much about this. With small side games, we touched a little bit about it. Grassroots. I was just talking about the benefits of starting the grassroots in the futsal court, but I didn't talk much about it yet. So we're going to have a model about this. We're writing a little book about this. Goalkeepers, we talked a little bit, and then how to implement that in your club. So our goal is to have that ready for the United Soccer Coaches Convention. So we can present it there and have it there, and hopefully, help try to contribute to the development of soccer in America and futsal. Because at the end of the day, I love both sports. I could not do anything that would hurt for me any of the two sports. I'm still to this day, futsal is a great passion of mine. As a goalkeeper, I was like always part of the game in futsal, so it was great to play. But at the same time, I have this passion without limits for soccer. Since 6 years old boy, watching Oliver Kahn playing for Germany in the 1982 World Cup. Oliver Kahn. Oliver Kahn is a different thing about his wrist. That was in my mind. I was writing about it.
Yeah.
Schumacher was the goalkeeper for 82, and I would hear the speaker say Schumacher, Ingo, and that just got something inside me. I said, I'm gonna be a goalkeeper. I was 6 years old, and that was there. I changed my life at that point. I said, I'm gonna be a goalkeeper. I wish the goalkeepers were inserted in the model of play in soccer like they are now. I think it's much more fun for a soccer goalkeeper to play now because the way people play. But that's the little story, Pedro. I really appreciate. Do you have any questions?
No, I mean, it was absolutely fascinating to see what futsal can bring into the beautiful game of soccer that we all enjoy and admire. So, and for us at Latino Coaches Group, it's one more tool that we make available to our coaches, and so that's why we ask that many viewers that will be watching this that will join and get their membership with United Soccer Coaches and have these tools available across all the platforms from Latino Coaches Group. So I want to really thank you for taking the time, Coach Antonelli, for sharing this part of a series that I'm sure we'll come back to touch in more depth in other segments of it, and because there's a lot of exciting things that we can, I'm sure that we can present to our audience out there. So I want to thank you very much so for taking your precious time to share this with us, and thank you for being part of the Latino Coaches Group. And I leave you with the last word for today.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. I think the Latino advocacy group is doing a great job. It's so proud to be a part of it right now. Don't forget, futsal is a Latino game, right? It started developing in Uruguay and then grew up in Brazil, and it's all over the world now, but it's definitely bigger in most like Latin countries. Counting even there like Portugal, Spain, Europe, some other countries in Europe, but definitely in South America. And again, spread all over the world, but started as a Latino game. So thank you so much. Anyone that if you have questions, if you're interested, feel free to contact. You have all the information, how to contact me. I hope to be contributing a little bit, Pedro. Again, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's a great pleasure to be here today.
Thank you, Coach, again. I appreciate, and to everyone out there, have a safe day, and it was great to have you here with us today. Thank you, and have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.